So, Battlefield 6's Beta 2 weekend is finally over, and that means that we've all gotten a good amount of time to really get down into the nitty-gritty and play this game. And overall, I had a really good time with it. That said, I also ran into a laundry list of potentially game-breaking problems that I think really need to be addressed, and I'm making this video almost sort of to set it as a time capsule, so that way if a lot of this stuff isn't addressed or isn't fixed, I can point back to this video and say, hey, at least I tried, and also I got ignored. Now to be clear, that's the last thing that I want. The ideal situation, game comes out, all this stuff is fixed, fantastic. But the reality of the day is, back when 2042 came out, I made a very similar video about the weapons situation and talked about how if they just ported the weapons over from Portal before the game came out, then they would have a hell of a lot more weapons to work with. And they didn't do that. The game launched with 22 weapons. People complained, and we didn't get Portal weapons until like a year after the game had already been out. I mean, even to this day, there's still a couple guns in there that you still can't use that are in Portal, and presumably you'll never be able to use. Anyways, like I said, the point of this video is to highlight several bugs that I ran into that may or may not fly under the radar to make sure that they're known about, along with another large subset of things that I think are just severe problems with the overall gameplay of the game that, if aren't patched out before the game comes out, could cause some serious problems on release. Anyways, I'm gonna go in a vague priority order when it comes to the bugs, and that's where we're gonna start. The first bug in question is a 2042 carryover from the release of that game, which worries me a lot. And that bug is the tank gunner bug based on the movement of your vehicle. That's not very descriptive, so a clip is definitely something that's going to have to suffice here. As you can see in the clip that you're seeing right now that I'll inevitably be slowing down, while I'm trying to fire at this stationary tow missile launcher, because the vehicle is moving around, it's sending my bullets wildly off target to the right or to the left. And once again, this was a bug that 2042 had in its beta and at the launch of the game. It's at the very top of my bugs list in terms of importance because, DICE, you guys have already fixed this problem in your previous title. And here it is, it's back. I only have one specific clip because this was hands down the most clear that you can see it, but it's indisputable what's going on here. I don't know what needs to be done based on the back end in order to not make this happen. I know how it happens, and once again, it's based off of the movement of the player who's driving the vehicle. So if they're moving left or right, for example, the bullets will way veer off path. But again, game-breaking issue makes it incredibly difficult and inconsistent to aim the gunner turrets in a lot of these vehicles, and I think the only reason that people aren't bringing this up more is because the gunner turrets in this game are so strong that a lot of the time it offsets the problem, because if you're able to just shoot so many bullets down range, as long as you're somewhat accurate, even if your aim's getting thrown all over the place, you'll still probably get most of your kills. Now, moving on, we can talk about the flares system, because once again, another Battlefield game where the flares just cease to function sometimes. This was a huge complaint that I had from the very beginning of 2042, all the way up until present day, where this still happens in 2042, albeit less likely. That said, this should just never happen. If you pop your flares while there's a missile incoming, you should not get hit by the missile. I really just don't see how this is such a consistent issue in these games. I don't care what you have to do, just make the missile self-destruct when you use flares, something. But getting hit after using the countermeasures to block a missile is incredibly frustrating. And it's even more frustrating based on a completely different bug, which causes the stinger damage to be seemingly completely random. Here's one of my favorite buggy clips from the beta, where I'm flying a plane, someone fires a missile at me, and I have borderline no chance to react to the missile as it is. The actual amount of time between the missile being fired and me having time to deploy flares is barely anything. But the funny part is that I actually did react quick enough, even though I had barely any time. You can see the flare animation start and the flares go on cooldown, and despite that, once again, I'm hit by the missile. But one of the things that you might take note of is the fact that I have full health in this clip, and presumably, the Stinger missile launcher is not supposed to one-shot kill you from full health. I know it's not because I played the game a lot. I got hit by Stingers plenty, and sometimes you take like 90% of your health, and sometimes you die instantly from full. It's seemingly completely random, and that just cannot happen. Continuing on the vehicle front, we can take a look at the vehicle camera bug. This was something that was pretty infuriating for me throughout a lot of the beta because I'm a big believer in vehicles and I think they're a lot of fun to use. That said, the discrepancy between the first person and third person camera had, well, a pretty big issue. And that pretty big issue is that when you would swap from your third person camera to your first person camera, where you were aiming in the third person camera is not where the camera will put you when you try to aim in first person. The evidence will be on screen, of course, if you don't quite understand what I'm saying, but if you look, I can have my camera in one specific spot, switch over to first person, and now instead of having my camera pointed at the same spot that it should be pointed at, it's pointing significantly lower or significantly higher. Battlefield vehicle gameplay can be really high-paced, especially if you're constantly switching between third and first person to make sure you always have the best points of view when it comes to specific aiming in first person, and generally keeping tabs on what's going on around you in third person. But with this bug in place, it often causes me to switch into first person to get that more precise shot, be way off from where I want to be, then I have to manually adjust the camera, and by the time I've done that, the person that I'm trying to shoot is long gone. I haven't seen this mentioned once. It's incredibly frustrating to deal with, and I'm really hoping that it gets patched out before the release of the game. In conjunction with this issue, there was another problem that cropped up constantly, and I'm not sure if I have footage for it, but it came to the aiming in third person, and the fact that a lot of the time when you would go to aim in first person, the actual tank turret would not be matched up with your crosshair itself. A lot of the time deciding to shoot significantly lower than where your middle of the screen crosshair is pointed for seemingly no reason at all. Next on the list, matchmaking bug. Just awful. I'm not a server browser purist at all. I think the matchmaking is pretty good. I think it helps friends get into games much faster when you have larger party sizes, and I think a lot of the people clamoring for server browser probably play solo. Because when it comes to trying to queue with more than 2 or 3 people, waiting in queues and doing all this nonsense, yeah, it's a pain in the ass. It's something we'll be getting into later. But the important thing is the bug on display here, and that bug is when the game queues you into a game and then just doesn't put you in. This happened constantly to me in the beta. It would run the timer down to 0, all of my friends would get into the game, and then I would just get stuck. And until I left the game and rejoined my friends, which would then get me stuck in a queue, we would get nowhere. This needs to get patched. It happens sometimes in 2042 as well, so I imagine it's another legacy bug where sometimes the game just doesn't put you in, but it's gotta be patched. The gadget bug. Oh, the gadget bug. I've reported this multiple times in labs, so it sort of pisses me off that it's still here, I'm not gonna lie. But this bug is just laughable. If you haven't run into the gadget bug, you must be God's gift to the earth, because it's so easy to have happen to you constantly that I'm shocked they haven't fixed it yet. Simple, go to place gadget. Have gadget not place. Take your ammo for placing said gadget. Wonderful. Now the funny part is that if you get another gadget and then you just simply equip it, it will place the original gadget you tried to place wherever you were trying to put it. Meaning that in theory, you could place a gadget down, have it gadget bug, go to the other side of the map, pull out a gadget after getting ammo, and the original one will then place across the entire map. Seriously though, it makes the recon class a chore to play, as there's nothing worse than getting behind enemy lines, placing a spawn beacon, getting gadget bugged, dying, and then knowing that you could have respawned back there, but you can't. Thanks, gadget bug. Like I said, this probably wouldn't piss me off as much as it does if I hadn't have already reported it several times in the labs Discord and having it never get fixed. Surely by the launch, right? God, I hope so. Speaking of gadgets, let's talk about another 2042 bug carryover, and that's the motion sensor bug. I assume they just copy-pasted the motion sensor code, and that's why this happens, but the bug is really simple. If you place down a motion sensor, get killed, and then respawn, your motion sensor stays where it was, but it doesn't work anymore. Yeah, you can see the footage on screen right now. There are clearly people within range of the motion sensor, but absolutely nobody shows up on the map. Obviously, easiest one, just make it so that the motion sensor keeps working when you respawn. But if you really can't figure that out, then just make it so the gadget breaks. Make it despawn when you get killed, so that way there's no confusion. Because when you place it down and you see it on the map and you see nobody there, and then you run through and there's a horde of people, that feels like crap. Ooh, the smoke grenade bugs, some of my favorites. There are 2 separate smoke grenade bugs currently in the beta, and both of them pretty much result in the same thing, which is throwing a smoke grenade, expecting it to work, having it not work, and then dying as a result. The first smoke grenade bug is throwing the smoke grenade, having it go off, and then nothing happening. Like, come on, you can see the effect playing, you can hear the sound playing, but there's no smoke. Pretty self-explanatory in this one. That shouldn't happen. Now, the other one, which happens even more often than the original, is throwing down a smoke grenade and then just having it roll around ineffective on the ground for like 20 seconds before finally going off. Like I said, same result as the previous issue, where you throw it and nothing happens and you die. And it's pretty comical being able to just watch your smoke grenade on the ground and just sort of hoping that it goes off. Shouldn't happen, needs to get fixed. Moving forward, the 100 plus damage bug. There is something going on with the damage numbers in the game, and I think the developers are already aware of this, but in case they still aren't sure, here's several clips showing the issue. This can happen with pretty much anything in the game. Sometimes you're shooting someone with a full auto and you do 100 plus damage and they run off. Sometimes you've got a shotgun. You shoot them bang on, it does 120 something damage. They don't care and they kill you. Now obviously you're not actually doing 100 plus damage because the person isn't dying. But the reason for the game telling you that you're doing 100 damage, I don't know. I saw a post, I think, on Twitter from one of the devs asking whether or not they could have had the potential to heal, but I think it's pretty clear based on the clips you're seeing, nobody's healing in between these bits of damage. It's doing 100 plus damage, they're not dying. Now, on that same vein, we can talk about the way that vehicle damage is calculated, which currently in the game is confusing and counterintuitive. That's because when you shoot vehicles, for whatever reason, it's counted in hundreds up to thousands. Every vehicle in the game seemingly has 1,000 health. So when you're shooting at a vehicle and you hit it with a rocket, it'll tell you that you do 200 damage. This is just needlessly confusing, and I'm not sure why it's programmed this way. If I hit a vehicle with a rocket and it's doing 25 health damage to the enemy's tank, even if the tank is programmed to technically have 1,000 health, it should show that I've done 25 damage to the health, not 250. It's confusing for the sake of confusing and just shouldn't be that way. How about the random damage bug though? This happens a lot, and believe it or not, you're not actually taking damage. Sometimes while you're running along, the game just all of a sudden says, yep, you got hit by something, and lowers your health for no reason at all when you have not been shot by anything. Like I said earlier, you haven't actually taken any damage, and the next time you take damage, it'll show the correct health pools. But this led to a lot of moments where I thought I was getting shot at, panicked, ran for cover, and then realized, no, it's just the damage bug. This shouldn't happen, they need to fix it. Now quickly let's talk about the terrain and overall physics of player movement. Because something that you'll probably have noticed happened a lot during the beta, which I hope they can sort out by the time the game comes out, is what I like to call moon jumps. It's when you bounce off of a piece of terrain and for some reason it just sends you sky high out of nowhere. This issue can lead to a lot of stupid moments, along with constant random deaths that you didn't earn because you just got launched over a piece of cover for no reason that you were hiding behind. It does exemplify another issue with the game though, and that's when you're walking around on uneven terrain and the game registers you as falling off of something. And when you go airborne in this game, your aim goes all over the place, which I think is a good thing when it comes to jumping, but I really think that if you fall off of a ledge, it shouldn't affect your aim at all. And the reason I say this is because you can have moments like this, where I step off of a curb, and because I stepped off of a curb, I lose this gunfight that I very clearly could have won because my aim goes into the sky for no reason. The next one I have a bit of a tinfoil hat on, I'll be totally honest, and that's death is just not counting at all. I mean, take a look at this clip. I'm clearly dead, I die fully, and it just doesn't give me an extra death. I played a lot of the beta, and there were a lot of people who just weren't good at the game, and I very clearly feel like should have had terrible scoreboard placements and tons of deaths, and they just didn't. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this no death bug played a decent part in that. The tinfoil hat is, of course, that somebody on the back end programmed it on purpose to sometimes not count deaths to make bad players not feel as worse for themselves. Obviously, I have no proof of this, and it's very unlikely that that's the case, but I've got my tinfoil hat theories nonetheless. Either way, if you get killed and respawn, yeah, the death should get counted. No shit. And finally, when it comes to bugs, we can talk about the sky limit when it comes to jet projectiles. This one's pretty funny. Take a look on screen. If you get too far up in the sky with a plane, your bullets just stop working. And the funny part is you can get to a point in the sky where you don't quite stall, but your bullets don't work at all. Basically what happens is if you're flying up here, you're effectively immortal to the enemy plane, which is hysterical. Obviously this shouldn't happen. Obviously the bullets should keep going until it literally goes past the range that you can get stuck, so that way people can't just go up, get stuck at the sky limit, and become immortal to jet cannons. Anyways, that was the relative speed run for all of the game-breaking bugs, or mostly game-breaking bugs that I ran into the game. I'm praying that all of these are fixed by release, considering that I've laid literally all of them out here, and if you've got any other bugs that you ran into that I didn't put on here that you think are super important, you can go ahead and let me know in the comments. I will make it clear that there are some things that I didn't include because I thought they were just so obvious that I didn't even need to put them on here. Those things are things like the vehicle repair stations not working on one side of the map on Liberation Peak. That's pretty clear. People being able to get on the roofs on Cairo, clearly unintended. They know about that one, so I didn't put it on here. Stuff like that I didn't include. I just put on the things that I thought were a little bit more low-key and needed to be documented. That said, fundamental problems with the game still existed that didn't relegate themselves to bugs, and those are things that I also want to address. Not nearly as important as the things that are clearly unintended, but some of these things are intended and they just aren't working very well. The first is probably something that's going to get a lot of controversy, even though it really shouldn't, and that's vehicles spawning on your flags. This is a terrible design decision, and I know that there's a lot of people in the Battlefield community that have some sort of hard-on when it comes to vehicles spawning on the map and vehicles spawning on the ground, and oh, herder, they can't just appear out of nowhere. But seriously, hear me out, let me try to explain this to you. Liberation Peak is a fantastic and perfect example of why this is bad design and should not happen, and that the general consensus of most vehicles on the map need to spawn in your deployment. Even if it is spawning manually, it should be in the deployment and not on a flag. On Liberation Peak, if one team manages to get control of the second flag out of the enemy team's spawn and steal their tank, they can have the enemy tank for the entirety of the match with minimal effort. Stealing vehicles in Battlefield games is a serious blow to the team that loses a vehicle. So much so that if it happens early, the enemy team simply cannot recover. And having it be so easy as to just take the point and wait for the tank to spawn and then yoink it is a real problem. And if you don't believe me, you can see the gameplay in the background where the enemy team is stuck in spawn and can't leave. And the reason for this is really simple. Just do the math. Right now, our team has 2 MBTs, an LAV, and a mobile AA, and the enemy team has a singular LAV. How the fuck are they supposed to fight back against us when we have 4 armored vehicles and they have 1? Not only is it a fundamental problem on that front, but it's also a problem from the fact that you can't spawn on these vehicles from the spawn screen, and you have to physically spawn on the point, run over to the vehicle, and get in it. To be clear, I understand why it's like this. They didn't want someone to be capturing the point and then all of a sudden have someone just appear in a tank. But the problem is, if you can't directly spawn on the vehicle, and it's not something you can spawn on from the spawn screen, a lot of players are not going to spawn on the point to get the tank. and that often leads to tanks just sitting on that base not being used, which lends even further to an enemy potentially flanking around and then just hopping in the empty tank and then taking the point, and now they have the point and your tank because nobody wanted to spawn on the flag and get it. And it leads to constant moments where I would see a tank sitting there and feel obligated to abandon whatever sandbox gameplay I wanted to do in order to get in the tank without putting our team at such a debilitating disadvantage that we would have no chance in the match. And to be clear, I don't think that vehicles spawning on flags in of itself is just completely horrible. In fact, I think Liberation Peak spawning an AA in the middle of the map is perfectly fine. The AA isn't that huge of a game changer, but it gives people a reason to fight over that middle flag versus the other C flag, which is on a hilltop, which provides a bigger tactical advantage, but doesn't have the AA over there. So if you take the low ground, you get the benefit of getting the AA. But when it comes to spawning incredibly important and integral vehicles like the team's main battle tank, it should not spawn on flags. It just should not. Now, speaking of vehicles, we can talk about the vehicle resupply stations when it comes to getting your ammo back. This is once again one of those things where I understand why they did it, and I even like why they did it, but the actual execution here is so abysmal that I don't know how they didn't see it coming. In its current state, vehicle resupply stations severely punish you for playing well with a vehicle and don't affect you at all if you play like shit with a vehicle. That makes no sense. Presumably, the reason for the vehicle resupply station is to prevent people from just sitting on a hill forever and endlessly raining shells and stuff down on the enemies. It forces you to go back to base at some point to resupply so you don't just sit in one spot. The problem is that resupplying from these stations gives you so little ammo back that if you have completely exhausted all of your ammo on the LAV, for example, I am not joking, you will be at a vehicle resupply station for upwards of 2 to 3 minutes doing nothing. All the while, of course, the enemy vehicles are still able to play the game while you sit there and do nothing and are unhelpful, all because you played well with the vehicle and haven't died. It's such a simple fix. The amount of ammo that you get per tick from these resupply stations needs to be like quadrupled, quintupled. You need to get way more ammo. 2 to 3 ticks from the resupply station and you should be back to full ammo because it is ridiculous how long it takes. Now, we've talked a whole lot about ground vehicles, let's talk air vehicles. More specifically, the Jet, which has a severe yaw issue when it comes to mouse input that I really hope is addressed, because if it isn't, then I'm just not really going to be able to fly the planes in the game. And as someone who has probably over 1,000 hours of jet flight experience over all of the Battlefield games, that would really suck. Basically, what I'm referring to is the overall reactivity of the yaw input when it's bound to a mouse input for mouse left or mouse right is not nearly high enough dependent on your sensitivity and your DPI. If you don't know exactly what I'm referring to, basically, if you make a small movement in the previous Battlefield games with a high DPI and a high vehicle aircraft sensitivity, you barely have to move your mouse at all in order to get the maximum yaw input. But on Battlefield 6, even if you max out all of those things, the maximum yaw input based on your mouse movement can't be hit unless you are constantly mega swiping across your mouse pad. Here's a side-by-side comparison of what it looks like where I slowly swipe my mouse across my mouse pad in Battlefield 4 versus Battlefield 6. Now, to be clear, Jets have a lot of other issues that I might be talking about in its own video, but this is one of those game-breaking issues that makes my specific control scheme unusable for planes, and that is so ass backwards when it works in every other game. It's probably something as easy as a numbers tweak. They managed to do it just fine in Battlefield 2042, the previous title in the series. So really all they need to do is copy paste whatever they did there when it comes to yaw inputs over here, and it should be fine. But in the state that it was in the beta, it was rough. Now, continuing when it comes to the air vehicles, I want to talk about the stationary AA guns and how they were pretty problematic in the beta. I really like the idea of the stationary AA guns, and I actually think that their overall damage output is fantastic. Right now, they absolutely shred helicopters, as they should. If you're not aware of all of the AA guns, you're gonna get blasted. That said, the problem with the AA guns is that they were borderline immortal. The only way to fight back against somebody in an AA gun during the beta was to shoot them out of the AA gun with splash damage, because the actual gun itself had some ridiculous health pool. It probably wasn't helped by the fact that the attack helicopter's missiles did so little damage to armor that even if you hit the thing several times it wouldn't die. But overall, it seems like they were trying to go for an approach with this game where you can kill things quickly and get killed by things quickly. And yet the anti-aircraft gun can take a tank round and continue to fire at you. That doesn't seem right. Not only that, but you can't lock onto them with any of the air-to-ground missiles or lock-on missiles in the game, which just makes the things unnecessarily difficult to deal with in aircraft when they should be a consistent thorn in the side, but not just a one-size-fits-all win button. Now, another vehicle issue that's honestly more of a legacy vehicle issue that I know they'll never fix, but it's the issue when it comes to gunner positions, the inability to lock gunner positions, but more importantly, the current ability to spawn on the LAVs in the game. To put it simply, you should not be able to spawn on the LAVs in this game. It completely obliterates match pacing and causes a completely unrelated issue, which is that if you're trying to work together with friends in a squad with the LAV, it's incredibly difficult to do so due to the entire team being able to spawn on the LAV. What I mean is, if you and your friend are in the driver and gunner seat respectively of the LAV, and you take damage, your friend jumps out to repair, and then somebody spawns into the gunner seat, your friend is just shit out of luck now. This is infuriating to deal with, and it is a constant problem, which causes you to basically have to tell your friend, hey, never get out of the gunner seat no matter how bad things may look, or you're not getting it back. Because trying to reason with teammates in this game when it comes to them getting into gunner seats and not getting out is impossible. And simply asking someone to get out has you far more likely to get into an argument with an idiot than it is to actually have the person do the right thing and give the seat back to the person who had it originally. I really think there ought to be a mechanic in the game where you're able to lock a seat when you hop out of it, even if it's just for 10 or 15 seconds, so that way teammates can't spawn in and immediately yoink it. Or just jump into the seat while you're repairing it and then choose not to get out. But once again, more importantly, the entire team should not be able to spawn onto the LAV because it causes consistent map pacing issues where if an LAV gets into the back flank, then you spawn about 40 people behind the battle lines, and now the entire front of the battle has been obliterated. This is fine if it's one or two squads that sneak around and put spawn beacons down, but when the entire team can do this, it's a bit of an issue. And finally, on a small note in terms of vehicles and anti-vehicle capabilities, why are the tow missile launchers so shit? Seriously, who programmed these things to be so garbage? Not only do they have a fixed firing angle for no reason, why can't I 360 degree spin this thing around? It makes no sense. But also the reload time on them takes forever. I feel like they just copy pasted the tow missiles from the LAVs and put them on a stationary turret for whatever reason, and because of that, they're awful. Come on guys, this is a stationary gun emplacement that you can't move at all while firing, and you're completely vulnerable with no cover. Make them reload quicker, and for the love of God, let us spin 360 degrees while using them. Now, finally off of the vehicle-related issues, and we can talk about the ass-backwards design of what happens when you get killed in this game when it comes to the revive timer. As it stands right now, if you die and press nothing, you bleed out very quickly. You can circumvent this problem by holding E, or if you change it in the settings, hitting E to a toggle, so that way your revive timer is extended by probably more than double. But if you want to skip the revive and die immediately, you can just hold spacebar to skip the revive. Now this hold spacebar thing has always rubbed me the wrong way in the past, and it still rubs me the wrong way, as there are way too many instances of me running over to revive somebody and then them just killing themselves immediately just because they're so used to hitting spacebar. But regardless, the problem with this system isn't even spacebar. The problem with this system is the fact that you have no choice but to press E in order to request a revive to prolong this revive timer, for no reason, and it's design that makes no sense. If you want to skip the revive and die, then you're going to press spacebar. But if you don't want to skip the revive and don't want to die, then why are you specifically punished for not pressing the request revive button? The fact that I had to explain this mechanic to every single person that I played with speaks to the problems here. And it's even more hilarious because you guys got it perfectly fine in 2042. In that game, the timer's static, it rolls down, you can hold spacebar to skip early, and you can press E to make your revive indicator bigger and make a noise for nearby medics to know where you are. Instead of this weird system where you've got kill yourself instantly, or actually wait for a revive. Why are there 2 kill yourself options? Just have a static timer, a skip button, and you don't even need the request revive button. If I'm waiting, I might as well already be requesting a revive. It doesn't make sense, it confuses the hell out of new players, and definitely leads to far too many deaths from people bleeding out when they shouldn't. Now, moving into the sort of death throes of this video, and we've got the minimap. Good God, the minimap. Why don't the options work here? And how did you guys do this so well in 2042 and then botch it in this game? It's pretty clear that they were pretty proud of what they did with this dynamic minimap, zooming in and out depending on whether or not you're in a building or you're in a street or what have you. But the fact that, as far as I could tell, there was no way to turn it off is baffling. This has to get changed when the game comes out, because for a lot of us, we like having a set distance for the minimap to work at. And in the current state of the game, that's just not how it works. If I go into a building, I still want to know what's going on outside of the building. And so I want the minimap to remain the same. Not only that, but 2042 let us have a keybind that we could use to change between 3 different presets of how large we want the minimap to be, letting the minimap take up a large portion of the map, almost as if you had the full map open, which was really helpful. But in this game, once again, because you can't change the dynamic minimap, you can't do that. It's so backwards, they need to change it. And it's one of those things where it's like, just give us more choice, guys. Don't force the dynamic minimap on us. Let us turn it off. And finally, something that I probably should have front-loaded with because of how important it is, but it is the final thing on my list of problems here, and that's the ability to play with more than 4 players in a squad. I'm not one of those people that's asking for 5-player squads or anything crazy like that. I have no problem with the 4-player squads in the game as they are right now. The problem is the inability to enter matchmaking with more than 4 people. Something that I completely don't understand why they're unable or unwilling to do when Battlefront 2 2017 let you queue with up to 20 people back in 2017. There were several moments, because of how many people are coming back to play this game, where I was trying to play with people that I haven't played with in a long time. And because of that, we had 6 or 7 people in a Discord. And yet despite that, 3 of those people, every single match we joined, would have to wait until we got into a game and then manually join our game, which would put them into a queue. And just, why is it so needlessly complicated? Just let us make a party of up to 32 people, because that's the highest that the game can go to have so many people on one team. And if 32 people want to queue into a match all in the same party, who fucking cares? Why are we not letting people do that? And just to be clear, the server browser in Portal is not a solution to this problem, because if you've played previous Battlefield games, you'll know that the server browser is infuriating to use when you're trying to play with 6, 7, 8 people. Now, instead of 3 or 4 people waiting in a queue, you have 7 people waiting in a queue. And then you all need to try to switch to try to get onto the same team, and it is such a massive, unnecessary headache that should be fixed by the matchmaking system, but isn't, because there's an arbitrary limit to 4 people per party. Let us queue with more than 4 people. We can manually split the squads in-game. It'll work perfectly fine, I promise. It's just so unnecessary, and it's a horrible way to just stop people from playing with each other. Battlefield should be a social game. Why am I getting punished for having more friends? I get punished for recommending the game to people because they can't play with me. What the fuck, guys? But yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. There's some stuff that I didn't mention on here because I feel like it's already been talked about to death and I don't really need to get into it. Things like the helicopter and jet flight models being not as good as they were before. I think that they're workable, but I think they could definitely be improved. But a lot of people on the internet have already done that whole legwork talking about all of the in-depth issues with those things, so I don't feel like they're important here. I wanted to talk about a lot of things that I haven't seen talked about that are just important, if not more important. The end-all be-all is I really want this game to succeed. I really hope someone behind the scenes manages to stumble across this video and fix all of these issues for launch, because I think if that manages to happen, we've got a seriously good game on the table. And even if they don't, I'll still be playing it at launch, just with a lot more frustration that I think was easily avoidable, especially when it comes to the party size. Please, guys, stop punishing us for having more than 3 friends. Please. Anyways, that's all. Naturally, if you enjoyed the video, you can leave a like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And with all that being said, have a wonderful day, night, wherever you are, and I'll see you guys next time.